I know that a lot of you are very much into drone photography, so I always do an in-depth review of the photo quality of every new drone. In this video I will show plenty of images in all the different light conditions to see if the Nano Plus can repeat in photography that sensational performance that this model has shown for footage. I don't generally start a review of a drone with negative points, but in this case I prefer to start right away by analyzing an issue that has been discussed a lot on social media, and a couple of other smaller flaws that Autel needs to address for a drone that otherwise has exceptional photos capabilities. I have read reports of strong color casts on the raw files of the Nano Plus, and I've seen on the web many images with colors completely off. The last firmware upgrade has brought many improvements, and the issue with the raw files has been addressed, although not completely fixed. In most raw images there is a green cast. When I open them with on one photo raw, the tint slider with the white balance is pushed all the way to the magenta side to compensate, but most images still show a slight excess of green. The vegetation and the green elements are a bit oversaturated. You will find info about On One Photo Raw, the software I use for editing photos and organizing videos and photos, in the comment below. You will also find links to the gear I use, including the Autel Nano Plus. By purchasing after clicking on these links, I get a tiny commission that really helps the channel. There are many ways to add some magenta to find a good balance, and it is then possible to save the changes as a preset and apply the same setting to fix the issue on most images. Quite simple. But the amount of color cast is not always the same, and a couple of times I got photos with a very strong yellow cast, which again can be fixed quite easily but require an extra amount of tweaking. Normally I don't even look at the JPEG files and only use RAW, but with a Nano Plus the JPEG images are extremely good, and this is excellent news for users who do not rely on editing their photos on a computer. When I run into a RAW image with serious color casts, there is always the possibility of simply using the JPEG. They are that good. So, at the end of the day, I can always obtain photo of outstanding quality, but a bit more work is required, and I'm sure Autel will very soon fix the color cast issue via firmware upgrade. Let me know in a comment below if you have encountered issues with the raw files and how you have solved them. The size of the sensor of the Nano Plus is 0.8 inches, much bigger than the one of the Mini 2 and a bit smaller than one of the Air 2S. In terms of footage quality, the Nano Plus is in a different league compared to the Mini 2, much closer in performance to the Air 2S and under certain aspects comparable to the mighty Mavic 3. Please refer to my video about the sensational quality of footage of the Nano Plus. I will post a link at the end of this one and in the description below. Since photography has never been the real strong point of the Mini 2, I expect the Nano Plus to outclass it by a big margin. The aperture of the camera at f1.9 is much wider than any DJI drone. We have already seen how the wide aperture combined to the RYYB color filter delivered astonishing low light performance for footage. We should expect something similar in photos. The Nano Plus can shoot single photos, burst shooting, interval shooting, and auto-exposure bracketing, with 3 of 5 different shots. But exposing with this drone is much harder compared to any DJI model. The reason is that the good people of Autel forgot to add the histogram, the tool that everyone uses to expose. Every single camera, smartphone or drone these days is equipped with one. Recently there has been a tendency to put on the market drones that are not fully ready for use, and then wait for feedback from users to add the finishing touches. This is understandable due to the shortage of chips of recent years, the pandemic and the fierce competition with DJI. But please Autel, add the histogram immediately. It's not a hard thing to do. And I mean now. Exposing without a histogram is not easy, but luckily with the Nano Plus we can use automatic exposure bracketing to take 5 shots with different exposure, and at least one of them should be well exposed. But sadly this is not the case with the Nano Plus because of a strong tendency to overexpose. Even the darkest of the 5 shots is overexposed to my test. The best way to expose, since we don't have a histogram, is to use auto exposure and then lower the EV compensation value by a couple of stops, and use automatic exposure bracketing to take 5 photos. There are several ways to interact with the screen. By tapping once we get a box for modifying the EV compensation. We can then slide down with the finger to -2 to lower exposure by 2 stops. If we touch the screen and while keeping the finger on we slide up or down, we tilt the gimbal up or downwards. The true photo resolution is 12.5 megapixel, but the sensor is a Bayer quad, which is able to split each pixel into smaller ones, similar to the one of the Mavic Air 2. So in the specs there is a 50 megapixel resolution mode, which has to be taken with a pinch of salt, as it is a bit of a marketing gimmick. But the ability to split each pixel into 4 smaller ones can yield good results in certain light conditions. There is a digital zoom that can be accessed while flying. We can tap on this icon for a 2x and 4x zoom level. By holding for a couple of seconds, we access the wheel going up to 14 times. Apparently the magnification is applied only to JPEG files, while RAW files remain in full size. This makes sense, as a digital zoom is only useful for users who do not intend to post-process their photos. When using RAW and post-processing the file, it is much easier to crop and reframe the image as needed. The quality of the zoomed-in image appears to be exactly the same as the cropped one, since the zoom is digital. In the camera tab of the settings we can choose the file format, RAW, JPEG or RAW and JPEG. There is also an interesting defog option with 3 strength levels. It applies both to video and photo. This function is similar to the dehaze slider in Lightroom. It increases contrast and saturation and is useful in case of aids or to add some extra structure to the sky. In top-down images we can appreciate the excellent amount of detail. Vegetation and tree branches are very difficult subjects, and the Nano Plus reproduces them to perfection, even at the deep crop level. The same goes for fine architectural detail. Moving to images containing good portion of the sky and elements on the ground, we notice that they are both rendered very well. The structure of the sky is excellent, and there is a very good balance between the shadows and the highlights. In most cases, with some tweaking, I managed to get pleasant colors from the RAW files, in spite of the green cast issue. In these images we have subjects with strong edges against a clear sky. Under these conditions most lenses show fringing and chromatic aberration along the edges, but there are no artifacts of any kind with the Nano Plus. Images containing the full sun in the frame, together with elements on the ground, are the big stress test, even for full-frame traditional cameras. Drones tend to struggle even more, due to the smaller sensor and the basic lens. The results obtained with the Nano Plus are very good for drone standards. Even though the sun is shining, uncovered by cloud, the structure of the sky is still relatively good, and there is a remarkable amount of detail in the shadows, with decent colors and low noise. There is some flare around the sun at some specific angles, but these are the worst possible light conditions. The performance in low-light footage on Nano Plus is beyond belief. Frankly, even better than my full-frame Nikon D850. Looking at these images, it is hard to believe that they were shot in pitch dark conditions. Here in Sicily, to save money, they only turn on the electric light very late at night. This tiny drone opens up uncharted territories for low-light footage and photography. It manages to squeeze an incredible amount of luminosity from the darkness. The amount of info in the shadows is unbelievable, and there is absolutely no noise at all. Astonishing. Click on this link for my review of the astonishing footage quality of the Autel Nano Plus. Don't forget to hit the like button if you find this video interesting. Thank you.